The town remembers the night by the color of the sirens. Red leaked over the bricks and into the thin rain, over the pharmacy shutters, across the glass of the bakery where the last loaves hardened in their sleep. A boy lay in the road on the edge where the asphalt turned to gravel and the gravel turned to ditch. His name was Gabriel. He was 17, and his mother would later say he ran like a metronome, steady, counting out seconds with his feet. That night his steps ended at the white stripe and the sound of tires. Before the ambulance came, a woman on a second-floor balcony held a phone and didn't know which god to call. Her name is Anna. What they tell you about grief is that it drowns. What they forget is that sometimes it leaves you beached, breathing, watching the tide refuse you. Weeks passed. A trial took shape the way winter takes shape, quietly, one brittle morning at a time. The police found the car by following a scar on the road and a trail of headlight glass that glittered in the weeds like iced sugar. The young man who turned the key that night had a name that sounded too soft for the newspapers. Daniel, 22. Father a mason, mother a cashier, hands with oil under the nails. He said he panicked. He said he thought the boy would stand up, and when the boy didn't, the rain began and the road opened like a mouth and he drove into it and didn't stop. The courtroom smelled of wool and bleach. People came to see a crime the way they might come to see a comet, once bright then gone. The judge's voice folded paper into verdicts. Daniel stared at the table as if it were a map he'd forgotten how to read, and Anna stood, not because the law called her, but because her legs did as if they belonged to an older promise. "I forgive him," she said. A sentence is a strange knife, some cut to heal. She didn't say it to the judge or to Daniel or to the town. She said it to the air where her son might have been standing if rain could return what it takes. Someone gasped the way people do when they discover a window where they expected a wall. Someone else hissed. The defense attorney blinked twice like a man who'd been shown a trick in a language he didn't speak. Forgiveness traveled across the benches like a draft. People pulled their collars tighter. The sentence the court gave Daniel was shorter than the one the town gave him. Suspended time, community service, a curfew that made the streetlights his wardens. The boy who didn't stop would now have to stop everywhere. That seemed to some polite and insufficient. On the day he came home, Anna was waiting at his gate. "Your grandmother's place is empty," she said. "You shouldn't be alone." "I am," he answered. "It's done." "It is not done. Nothing is done. Let me in." He opened the gate to the woman whose son he had put under a stone, and with that simple latch the town began its second trial. This one without a judge or a transcript, only eyes. The house smelled of old lemon cleaner and closed windows. Dust had arranged itself according to a logic only dust understands. On the ridge of a picture frame, inside the seam of a curtain, over a teacup that had once believed in guests. Anna set her bag down and took off her coat as if she were entering a church. Daniel stood in the doorway and didn't know where to put his hands, so he placed them in his pockets as if they might misbehave. "I will cook," she said. "I will clean. I will listen." He tried to laugh, but the sound lost its courage. "Listen to what?" "Whatever your silence says." The first night she made soup with garlic and 2 apologies. One for the salt, one for staying. Daniel ate like a man who'd forgotten the grammar of hunger. They didn't speak about the road. They spoke about the leaking sink and the cracked tile and the way a neighbor's dog barked at 4 in the morning as if remembering something from before it was a dog. Anna slept on the couch beneath a throw knitted by hands that were no longer alive. In the dark, when the house breathed, she counted, not sheep, seconds. The way she had counted on the balcony with the phone, the rain on the railing, the glow of her son's steps thinning under cloud. She had counted 119 of them before she remembered the number for the ambulance. The number was written beside the kitchen phone 12 steps away. The balcony door stuck a little. The rain made the tile slick. The phone worked. Her hands didn't. In the morning she stood at the sink and washed a glass that had never been used, and in the glass she saw herself, as if in a cheap mirror, skin like paper that had been folded and unfolded, eyes with a question no one could answer. When Daniel left for his service hours, she wandered the rooms and moved nothing. She found the drawer that held his grandmother's rosary and laid it on the table, not as a sermon, but as an instrument. She placed a small bowl by the door and put into it the kind of broken glass that headlight lenses make, sharp but beautiful, like a grammar that hurts. She didn't say why. She didn't know how to. At night, when the service hours were done and the curfew had wrapped its tether around his ankle, Daniel sat at the table and learned to hold a spoon again. The house made a sound like thinking. Once, during the 3rd week, the power flickered. and the room went blind, and in the brief dark he said, soft as a cough. He turned his head. Anna did not look at him. "Gabriel? I don't know his name," he said, and the name was a stone in her mouth. "I mean the boy." He turned his head after the sound, like he was looking for something under the rain. "Water looks like everything," she said. The 4th week, she changed the sheets on the bed he refused to sleep in. The 5th week, she replaced the bulb on the porch and left the dead one on the counter, filament like a bruise. The 6th week, she stood in the doorway of his room and watched him try to fix the alarm clock that had never had the decency to be on time. "Do you pray?" she asked. He blew dust and squinted. "Not since. Not since before," she corrected. He shrugged. "Before I was a person who could do a thing like that, I didn't pray. After, I didn't deserve to." "You sound like a priest," she said, and the word hung in the air like steam. He looked up at her as if he'd been caught speaking to a wall. The town learned to cross the street. Women in the market made their mouths into the shapes of lemons. Men in overalls invented errands that led away from Daniel's path. Children stared until their mothers taught them not to. The bakery stopped saving an extra roll. The pastor preached a sermon about forgiveness that managed never to say the word. When Anna walked to the store, she could feel the eyes on her coat tugging like hands. "I told you not to be alone," she told Daniel when she came back with milk and 3 glances that pretended not to exist. "You've made me less alone and more lonely," he said. "It's an improvement." They began a ritual without naming it. After dinner, they would sit at the table and tell the truth poorly, which is to say slowly. He would bring a memory and lay it down without meeting her gaze, the way a child offers a broken toy. She would answer with a detail he didn't know, a tenderness she was ashamed to feel. "The wipers were going," he said once, but the glass was still water. It was like driving through a mirror. "He wore my scarf," she said. "It was red when we bought it. The rain made it darker. I thought I saw him stand. He hated standing," she said. "He said it made time grow teeth. The engine made a sound like fear. My phone made no sound," she said. "I made no sound." "What do you mean?" he asked. And she stood slowly, as if the chair had been holding her together, and walked to the drawer and took out a small kitchen timer shaped like an egg. 119 seconds, she said, and turned the dial and set it on the table between them. And the egg began to count out a small, brave life. The seconds knocked. They sounded like a door with cold hands. "I was on the balcony," she said, when the egg had finished its proof. "The phone was 12 steps away. I know because the tile is old and cracks like a map. And I had time to learn every road." She picked up the egg and set it down again, as if it could roll back to a different night. "I forgave you because I could not forgive this." He stared at the thing that had counted, and at the woman who had counted, and at his hands that had gripped a wheel. He lifted his eyes and found hers and didn't look away. "Why are you here?" "Because someone had to live with you," she said. "And the person who needed to live with you was me." He stood so quickly the chair scolded the floor. He walked to the doorway and to the bowl and picked up a piece of glass and put it down again and came back as if the room had a gravity he could not beat. "I stopped," he whispered. "I stopped the car. I did. For a moment. I opened the door. The rain got in like a dog that never had a home. I took one step. He was not moving. I didn't touch him. I should have, but I didn't. Lights came. Another car. I thought, someone else will do the right thing. I closed the door. I closed it like a prayer." "You did not pray," she said. "I prayed to the wrong God," he said. "The God of not being anyone. The God of not having done it. The God of a morning that might refute the night. Those gods never answer," she said. "They only listen, like walls." He sat. He was crying without learning how, the way some people sing off-key and become beautiful because they don't know they shouldn't. "I hear it," he said, touching his chest. "I hear it at night, the engine, the wipers, the world choosing not to be mine. And something else, and a clock maybe." She looked at the egg that had finished its little life. "I hear it too." The next mornings learned their chores. She opened windows, invited the house to remember air. He repaired small humiliations, the door that wouldn't choose a side, the faucet that stuttered, the lamp that believed in flicker. Once the postman brought a letter addressed to nobody. Occupant. Anna laughed like a person testing a bridge. At the market, the town practiced its sport. Words like hooks, shame, spectacle, witch. The words were cowards. They only traveled in groups. Anna bought tomatoes and stood too long choosing them until a hand, Mrs. Rocha, who had bandaged Gabriel's knee once, reached and picked the best one and put it in Anna's bag without speaking. The tomato was red with a kind of mercy. In the afternoon, the school called. "We'd like to place a bench in the courtyard," the principal said. "A little plaque. Gabriel, would you write something?" Anna stared at the wall and saw for a moment the outline of a boy taller than his height. "I will." That night she wrote, "For the feet that counted time. Sit, breathe, let the wind arrive before you do." Daniel read the sentence as if reading a diagnosis. "It's gentle. It is true," she said. He nodded and placed another truth beside it. His coach came by the site, he said. "Left a jersey, number 11, the rain took the ink." "Rain always edits," she said. "It removes the part that insists too much." Hostility arrived in smaller envelopes. Someone scratched the word monster into Daniel's fence. Letters too careful to be a child. A bottle tipped and broke on the walkway. A glitter of brown honesty. On Sunday, a group stood across the street and practiced their right to be righteous. One of them, a man with a megaphone, preached a baby sermon about justice. The sound came like hail. Anna stood at the window and didn't move. "Should I call?" Daniel asked, already not moving. "No," she said. "They are rehearsing themselves. They will forget their lines." He wanted to believe her. He tried. He breathed as if the air had rules. The group left. Hail melts. Pride too. That night, a visitor came who made the air forget its grammar. A man with Gabriel's jaw, older by 2 decades and 100 mistakes. "Anna," he said from the gate. "It's me." She knew it was. Gabriel's father had been gone 13 years. He wore a new apology, like an old coat. "I heard," he said, looking past her shoulder into a house that had never been his. "I heard what you did. I came to say it to him," she said, stepping aside so the sentence could enter. Daniel stood in the hallway and felt the shape of his shadow. The man, Marcos, tried to make his mouth into fatherhood. "I'm sorry, son," he said, "to the wrong boy, to the only one available. I'm sorry to you both." Daniel nodded. "We know," he said, surprising himself. "We're practicing." They sat at the table like people who had rehearsed a grief in separate rooms. Marcos asked about Gabriel's last months, a list of groceries you could never buy again. He asked if Gabriel still hummed in the shower, if he still kept his socks in the wrong drawer, if he still asked questions with his hands. Anna answered, and then stopped answering, and then watched Daniel answer for her, his voice thinner, but honest, as if he were a neighbor translating the weather. Marcos's eyes found the egg timer. "What's that?" "A clock that tells the truth," Anna said. He reached for it and didn't. "I left because I was afraid of becoming the wrong man," he said. "I see that I did. We all did," Anna said, and stood, and poured coffee that tasted like staying. Marcos left with nothing except a picture of a bench he hadn't earned and a sentence. "Come back when you can be quiet," he promised. Men like him love verbs. A second climax came disguised as an ordinary Tuesday. Rain again, because the town had a habit. Anna on the bus, a seat by the window, a bag with onions and the courage to use them. At the intersection by the bridge, the bus stuttered and sighed and stopped. Outside, a boy on a bicycle, too small for his certainty, cut across the lane. A truck turned the way memories turn. Late, loud, certain. The scene arranged itself in a single terrible sentence. Anna rose. So did Daniel, 2 blocks away, his body recognizing a grammar it would not permit. He had been walking home along the river, counting things because numbers were the only stable religion left. 7 geese, 3 graffiti ghosts, 2 coins that someone else would mistake for grace. When the truck coughed and the bicycle translated fear into wobble, Daniel ran. The bus driver shouted a word that children aren't allowed to spell. The truck brayed. The boy, blue jacket, no helmet, as if faith could be worn, looked everywhere except where danger lives. Daniel arrived first, not to the boy, but to the space between boy and sentence. He didn't think. People always say that when they finally do. He lifted the bike by its thin bones and twisted his body so the truck would choose him if it still wanted a body. It didn't. Brakes learned their purpose. Rubber burned. The truck kissed the curb instead, metal confessing its limits. The boy fell in a stack of surprise. The bike cried out in spokes. The bus exhaled. The town, for once, shut up. The driver ran out, a man who had never missed a birthday. "Jesus," he said to the wrong savior. "You okay, kid?" The kid cried in a language that only knees understand. Daniel put the bike down and stepped back as if he had just drawn a line the world should not cross again. He didn't look around for witnesses. He didn't want the day to belong to anyone but the boy. He turned and saw through the bus window Anna's face, which had learned a new kind of tears. She found him at the corner where the river thinks about being a lake. "You moved," she said. "I did," he answered, because to lie to her would have broken the only treaty that mattered. "You moved," she said again, like a prayer that had rehearsed other words for a lifetime and finally found its original. He closed his eyes. "I wanted to then. The first time. I wanted to. I tell myself I did. But wanting is not the same as taking a step." "No," she said, "but it is where the foot begins." They walked home, the town performing an honest miracle, minding its business. Days developed manners. Marcos returned and didn't bring a confession. He brought a photo album and the knowledge that he had missed the best weather. Anna sat with him and turned pages like fragile doors. Daniel made coffee that didn't try to fix anyone. At the school, the bench arrived. Children sat and didn't know why they felt quieter there. The plaque caught the light at 4:30 in the afternoon, the way some faces catch forgiveness. The pastor, perhaps bitten by his own sermon, came by the house with a box of mismatched candles. He didn't have a speech. He placed the box on the table like bread. "For the living," he said, borrowing her line without knowing it. Neighbors learned to wave without footnotes. The bakery returned to its vice of generosity. Mrs. Rocha, she of the tomato, came for tea and stayed for thunder. She waited until the cup was half empty to say, "I thought you were wrong." She didn't need to finish. Anna squeezed her hand in the way women have of writing forgiveness into bones. There was ugliness too, because the world refuses singular moods. An anonymous letter slid under the door, swollen with certainty. "You are sick. God is not with you." Anna placed it under the table leg that wobbled. The table steadied. The letter found its calling, and there was beauty that didn't announce itself. A cat chose their porch. A plant Anna had given up on behaved as if it had read the right book. Daniel's laugh learned to arrive uninvited and leave without apology. On a thin evening, Anna brought out the egg timer and placed it in Daniel's hand. "Tell me the seconds again," she said. 119, he answered, as if naming a child. "Now tell me the seconds from the bus to the bike," she said. He considered. 11, he said. "Maybe 12. She nodded. "God does not count like we do." He turned the timer's face and let it speak its little truth. When it finished, they didn't move to start it again. They let the quiet be the next thing. The second climax needed a door. It came 7 months after the sirens learned their color. Night heavy with a storm that couldn't pick a house. A knock, not angry, official. The detective from the first season of their lives stood with rain beating on his coat. "Mr. Mendez," he said to Daniel, voice without enemies. "We're closing the file the right way. Your statement about stopping, the new one, it should have been in the record. I'm sorry, I had to ask you to sign." Daniel glanced at Anna. She was holding a towel she had wrung into a confession. He signed. The detective looked at Anna then, not as a witness but as a woman who had outlived fire. "You saved a boy this spring," the detective said to Daniel as if discussing weather. "I thought you should know we still notice when someone moves." After he left, the house did something adults rarely do. It changed its mind. The corners softened. The air forgave the walls for being literal. Anna set down the towel and picked up the rosary and didn't pray. She listened to the beads, small stones that had learned to be patient. "Do you miss him?" Daniel asked, knowing the word him had become two people stacked. "Yes," she said. "Both, differently." He nodded. "I miss who I was before I learned who I was. That's called growing up," she said, and smiled a smile that didn't flinch. He looked at her, at the woman who had entered his house like a verdict and become a season. "Will you stay?" "Until the soup learns to make itself," she said. They laughed, the kind that gives a house a new roof. On the anniversary, rain came on schedule, and Anna went to the road by the ditch where a boy had met a car and a woman had met her hands. She knelt. The people who passed gave the kind of space one gives to fires and prayers. Daniel stood a few steps back. He held a candle, clumsy, as if light were heavier than he'd expected. He waited. Anna touched the white line with her fingertips. "This is where it unthreaded," she said. "This is where it stitched us to something else." Rain wrote its quick, illegible handwriting on the asphalt. She stood and faced him. "I did not move," she said. "You did and you didn't. That's what we are. We live here now. Here." He looked at the road, the ditch, the small cross the neighbors had hammered into the ground without asking. In the place where what should have been wasn't, she said. In the room between stop and go. In the little church between a mouth and a telephone. He nodded like a man learning a difficult music. Will I ever be anyone else? You will be many people, she said gently. But you will always also be this one. And you? He asked. I will always be the mother who counted seconds, she said. But I am also the woman who cooks soup and cleans tile and tells the truth poorly until it becomes honest. We are more sentences than the town allowed us. They walked home in rain that made everything into itself. At the gate, she paused and looked at the house as if it had grown a new section in the night. Do you want me to go? She asked. No, he said, and the swiftness of the word surprised even the roof. Stay. We are less dangerous to ourselves together. Inside, the house learned another new sound. Two people laughing softly at nothing. She warmed yesterday's soup, the one with garlic and apologies, and added pepper and a forgiveness that didn't ask to be noticed. He set the table the way boys learn to set tables, awkwardly with affection. They ate. Later, she sat at the table with the egg timer open in her palm, the spring glinting like a little road. He watched her and felt the odd mercy of being told a secret you're strong enough to carry. He reached out and, uncertain, placed his hand over hers, not like a lover and not like a son, but like a person who has found where to put his hand. Do you hear it? He asked. She listened. The house breathed. The rain wrote. Somewhere distant, a train remembered its map. Yes, she said, but it is softer now. The next Sunday, there were 3 candles on the table. He lifted an eyebrow. For whom? He asked, smiling a little, and felt guilty for smiling. For the living, she said. We forget them. They sat with the living. The wax bent and obeyed and disobeyed. The flames made promises they could keep, to flicker, to burn down, to go out. On a Saturday market morning, the bench at the school earned its first true story. 2 girls sat and traded secrets that would not hold the winter, and a boy tied his laces slowly, listening to the feet of the world, and a teacher paused before scolding anyone, as if remembering a time she had saved a life by saying no. Marcos returned with weather on his shoulders and no speeches. He knocked, then didn't, then entered, hands visible, history backstage. He placed a photo on the table, Gabriel at 5, mispronouncing afternoon. He didn't cry. He did something older. He stayed. When he left, hours later, he left slowly, like someone who had finally been permitted to walk at the speed of his apology. Mrs. Rocha brought tomatoes again, and a rumor that was kind this time. People had stopped using the word monster. The town had remembered the plural of human. In the evening, a letter came addressed correctly, A&A and Daniel. No return. Inside, a photograph. A bicycle leaned against a fence, a blue jacket on a hook. A sentence written by a child's hand, "Thank you for moving," and a drawing of a truck with eyelashes. Anna laughed until her body forgave her. Daniel placed the photo on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a fish that had never seen water. He stood back and saw a world where children draw forgiveness with thick lines. Not every truth deserves the light, but some, when they finally see it, do not blind. They warm. So the town remembers the night by the color of the sirens, and this house remembers the year by the color of the soup, the argument of 2 spoons, the shape of the little egg that counted what could not be counted. In time, the market learns new gossip, and the pastor learns new courage, and the bakery miscounts on purpose, saving one roll that belongs to no one and thus to both of them. If you ask them why she moved in, they will give you the wrong reasons. They will talk about pity or madness or a faith too weak to stay in a church. They will speak of shame, and they will not be entirely wrong. But at the table where 2 candles became 3, the reason is quieter. She forgave the boy who killed her son because she could not forgive the woman who paused. She moved in with him because some sentences are only survivable when spoken in the same room. He covered a murder and tried to bury his conscience. He could not. He opened the gate. They live in the room between stop and go. They keep the door unlocked. Some nights the rain returns and they stand under it and do not move for a while, in honor of what didn't. And then together, they go to the kitchen and light their ordinary fire, and make steam and breathe and remember, not to punish, not to purify, but to be what the law cannot make of anyone, human again. And when they are done remembering, when the soup is warm and the night is almost kind, she reaches for the matches. The flame lifts its small face. He watches, not as a petitioner but as a witness. They set the candle down and let it be a candle. And that's enough, she says. He nods. It is. Weeks became a season. and the house learned the rhythm of its strange peace. The soup still simmered on Sundays. The candles still burned to measure their faith in small, steady increments. But silence, like forgiveness, doesn't last unless it's tested. It began with a letter, neatly folded, hand-delivered by the postman who used to cross the street to avoid them. The envelope was thick, the handwriting expensive. To Mrs. Ana Oliveira and Mr. Daniel Mendez. I'm a journalist working on a feature about moral courage. Your story has reached me. Your decision to live together. Your act of forgiveness. The world should hear it. There was a card inside, embossed with the name of a national newspaper, and beneath it a line handwritten in ink that tried too hard to be gentle. What you did gives people hope. Ana folded the letter once, twice, 3 times. Hope was a word she had stopped trusting. It behaved too much like pity. Daniel found her at the table, the letter under her hand. "Are you going to answer it?" he asked. She looked at him, the quiet returning to her face like light through curtains. "I don't know," she said. "Some stories are meant to be lived, not repeated." He nodded. "But others might need it." "Maybe," she said. "But every time I tell it, I live it again. And not everyone survives their own story twice." That night she couldn't sleep. The words on the letter grew teeth in the dark. Forgiveness. Courage, hope, words people used when they wanted your pain to mean something convenient. At 3 a.m, she stood by the window. Outside, the streetlight hummed, a single note of loneliness. She thought of Gabriel's laughter in the kitchen, how he used to tap the counter to the rhythm of songs only he knew. She thought of the sound of the rain the night he died, the longest song she'd ever heard, and she realized something unsettling. She no longer hated the sound. That terrified her more than the grief ever had. A week later, the journalist came in person. A man in his 30s, polite in the way people are when they want something noble. He spoke like someone entering a church, camera slung over his shoulder, eyes rehearsed in sympathy. "I'd like to record an interview," he said softly. "Just a few questions about what forgiveness feels like." Ana looked at him the way one looks at a mirror that doesn't reflect what it should. "What it feels like," she repeated. "It feels like bleeding in a way people applaud." Daniel, standing behind her, didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes asked the question for her. Why reopen what we buried together? The journalist smiled the smile of good intentions. "You could help people," he said. Ana stepped closer, the tremor in her voice not fear but precision. "People don't want help," she said. "They want to believe pain has a purpose. They want to watch it, feel moral, and go home dry." He faltered. "But your act wasn't an act," she said. "It was survival." Her hand closed the door with a gentleness that could break glass. Inside, the air between them was thick and quiet. Daniel broke it first. "He didn't mean harm." "No," she said, "but neither did you that night. Meaning doesn't undo what is done." She sat at the table and turned the egg timer between her palms like a coin. 119 seconds, she whispered. "They keep following me. Every time someone asks about forgiveness, those seconds come back. They never ask about them, do they?" "No," he said softly. "They ask how I feel now, not what I failed to feel then." That evening they walked to the park because staying in felt too heavy. Children played near the new bench, the one with the plaque. A woman was reading the inscription aloud to her daughter, her voice slow and careful. "For the feet that counted time, sit, breathe. Let the wind arrive before you do." The little girl asked, "Who was Gabriel?" The woman paused, searching for a story she didn't own. "I don't know," she said, "but whoever he was, someone loved him very much." Ana stood a few steps away, unseen, listening. Something in her chest cracked, not pain, not pride, just the recognition of permanence. You can forgive, you can move, you can live, but the story remains. It becomes furniture in other people's rooms. On the way back, Daniel spoke carefully. "I've been thinking about leaving," he said. She didn't answer. The word leaving echoed longer than it should. "Not because I want to run," he added, "because I want to build something that isn't made of guilt." She stopped walking. "And you think distance will do that?" "I think time might," he said. "And space is how time breathes." Ana looked at him, at the boy who had become a man under her roof. Her voice softened. "If you go, take the glass bowl." He blinked. "The one by the door?" "Yes. Broken things belong with you now." He smiled, a sad, grateful smile. "You'll be okay?" "I learned to live with silence," she said. "I'll learn to live with quiet." Daniel left 2 mornings later. He didn't take much, just the glass bowl, a sweater, and a notebook. He left the egg timer on the table. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was trust. The house changed shape again. The quiet was different now. Not the silence of grief, but the stillness of space waiting to be filled. She cooked smaller meals. She opened the windows wider. Sometimes she caught herself setting 2 plates and she didn't correct the mistake right away. Some habits deserve mercy. A year passed. The town that once judged now nodded politely. Forgiveness, it seemed, was contagious in theory and invisible in practice. The pastor preached about the strength to let go. Anna smiled quietly in the back pew, because letting go, she'd learned, isn't strength. It's exhaustion turned into grace. One morning, she received another letter. No journalist this time. No pity in the handwriting. Just a few lines on plain paper. Dear Anna, the boy on the bicycle is doing well. He says he wants to become a driver one day. To go faster, not to flee. He remembers your face in the rain, thank you. His mother. Anna read it 3 times. She felt the strange warmth of a circle closing, not neatly but kindly. A child lived. Another learned. A woman forgave. Maybe that was how the world stitched itself back together. Not perfectly, but continuously. The next Sunday she lit 3 candles again, as she always did. But that morning she added a 4th. One for the dead. One for the living. One for the ones who still don't know which they are. And one for the truth. Because truth, like fire, needs watching. When the flame steadied, she spoke to the air. It wasn't a prayer exactly. It was something older, rawer, almost defiant. People think forgiveness ends when peace begins, she said. They're wrong. Forgiveness is work. It rusts if you stop using it. She looked at the egg timer and turned it once. The ticking filled the house with a sound that was no longer accusation, but pulse. That night, the rain returned. The same pattern, the same streetlight, the same hum. Anna stood by the window watching drops race each other down the glass. Her reflection looked older, but not broken, just real. She picked up the phone from the counter. 12 steps, same distance. She dialed a number she hadn't in months. It rang 3 times before she heard Daniel's voice. Hello? It's raining, she said. A pause, then the sound of a breath that knew what that meant. Does it still hurt? Yes, she said. But I can breathe inside it now. He laughed quietly. I can too. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain filled the silence like an old friend. Then she said, Tell me, Daniel, do you still hear it, the heartbeat? He hesitated. Sometimes, but now it sounds like a clock that finally learned patience. She smiled. Then we're healing. Do you want me to come by? He asked. No, she said softly. Stay where you are. You moved once. That's enough. The following morning, Anna walked to the river path. The water was high, impatient, but not cruel. She sat on the bench near the bend where the fog gathers. A boy with a fishing rod waved. She waved back. The same boy from the bus. Taller now. Braver. He held the rod wrong, but confidently. She almost called out a correction, then stopped. Not every lesson needs a teacher. The church bell rang from far away. 7 slow chimes, each one soft as forgiveness. She took the egg timer from her pocket, wound it once, and set it on the bench beside her. It ticked steadily, measuring not seconds but moments she hadn't wasted. When it stopped, she didn't start it again. She whispered to the water, 119 then, 12 now. I moved too, finally. The river accepted the confession without ceremony. That evening, the town gathered for the annual memorial of lost sons and daughters. Candles floated down the water, hundreds of them, their reflections trembling like memory itself. Anna stood at the bank holding one candle, not white like the others but blue, the color of dusk, of in-between. Daniel appeared through the crowd. No words, just presence. They stood together as the candle drifted away, its little light arguing gently with the wind. Do you ever wish it had been someone else? He asked. No, she said, because someone else might not have stayed. He nodded, watching the lights blur into distance. The world won't understand this, he said. It doesn't have to, she answered. We do. They walked back through the crowd, shoulder to shoulder, the whispers parting like smoke. No longer judged, not quite admired, simply seen. At home, the candles on the table waited. She lit 3, he lit the 4th. The flames swayed together in a silent conversation. After a long moment, Anna spoke. Do you know what forgiveness really is? Daniel shook his head. It's remembering without revenge, she said. It's pain that learned its manners. He smiled. the smallest smile. And love, love, she said, is what stays after both people stop deserving it. The candles burned down slowly, the soup warmed again, and in the house where guilt had once slept on the couch, something else moved in. Something quiet, unremarkable, human. The town remembers the night by the color of the sirens, but she remembers it now by the color of dawn, a soft, forgiving blue. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, is not a door that closes. It's a light that stays on so no one walks in the dark alone.